One moment you could be at the height of your career, performing at Coachella, rocking viral video after viral video, and even getting your own Fortnite skin. Then fast forward a little bit over a year, and you're in a courtroom facing life in prison and or worse. So with all the information we have right now, it seems like David threw his life away. He's the singer who went viral for his whole song, Romantic Homicide, and he just pled not guilty to charges of taking the life of a teenage girl who vanished last year. So 1 year since she went missing, and around 6 months after she was discovered in an abandoned Tesla that was linked to David, there's finally been some movement towards justice in the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. And it's safe to say, I mean, it is not looking good for David right now, considering he's currently looking at, 3 different sets of charges, all of them equally as serious. Not to mention how long it took for the authorities to actually bring these charges forward. I mean, like I said, it's been half a year. So it's safe to say there's been some serious outrage. I mean, people were mad at the police for not immediately throwing David behind bars when everything was first coming out. Since, the overwhelming majority of people who did one Google search realized, this doesn't look good for the guy. But again, these sorts of accusations follow someone forever. And if it did come out that he was not guilty, it would be a terrible look for the police. So I mean, if there's just a chance that they could be accusing a, massive singer for this horrific crime, that's not one they want to take. But that's not to say that they didn't do anything, because if you look at all the information they just recently released, again, it's not looking good for David whatsoever. And if you saw my last video on this, we saw this arrest coming from a mile away, and thank goodness someone's actually being held responsible for this girl's passing. But if you're not fully aware of what I'm talking about, I'll give you some backstory before we go into what's next for David and why he's currently behind bars. So David, or David Anthony Burke, he blew up on TikTok in 2022 when he was making his own music to avoid copyright strikes on his own Fortnite edits. Which sounds ridiculous, but I guess he was trying to circumvent the predatory music labels who saw 3 seconds of their own music being used on some 10-minute YouTube video, and then they claim 100% of the revenue from that video. That's a problem in its own, but that turned out to be a blessing in disguise for this guy, because then he realized, he was pretty decent at making music. And when all these Fortnite edits started going viral, people started listening more and more to his music. I mean, the dude was basically an overnight sensation because he went from being basically a nobody to having millions of followers, being signed to Interscope Records, performing at Coachella, opening for SZA on tour, and creating music that, wildly popular TV shows was using. And fans loved his personality online, and honestly, some of his songs are decently catchy, so I understand why they blew up. Plus, he recorded and produced some of his early music on his phone, so that also intrigued people in wanting to know how he did all this on just his phone. So I guess he had a cool thing going, but his most popular song being titled Romantic Homicide, and some of his music videos featuring, bodies in cars, that had people's spidey senses tingling when the remains of a 15-year-old girl was found in a Tesla linked to him. I mean, after seeing that video now, knowing what the allegations towards him are, what kind of self-report is this? This is just unbelievable. And this story is about as horrifying as it gets, because in September of last year, employees at Hollywood Impound, they noticed a foul smell coming from what seemed to be an abandoned Tesla. So when police arrived and searched for the vehicle, they unfortunately found the remains of a 15-year-old girl who was later identified as Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And immediately it was reported that the Tesla was connected to David and had originally been abandoned by his rental home before it was towed to the lot. At the time though, David was actually on his North American tour, and his distance from the tragedy allowed fans to convince themselves that this is just some terrible coincidence that he couldn't possibly be involved in. There's a reason why this channel highlights the internet's most ridiculous moments, just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. Because when you're seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions of dollars. And if you're injured by someone else's negligence, you deserve to be paid. And Morgan & Morgan does not settle for lowball offers. With over $30 billion recovered for clients, Morgan & Morgan knows a thing or two about fighting for the compensation you deserve. And with over 1,000 lawyers and hundreds of offices nationwide, it's kind of like having an entire army on your side. Not all law firms are the same, because if you hire the wrong one, you may lose before you even get started. So if you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan at forthepeople.com/Atozy. And if you end up working with them, their fee is completely free unless you win. And you can find the link at the top of the description down below to see if you actually have a claim. But without further ado, let's continue the video. Once details started emerging, like the fact the victim even had a matching tattoo with David, and there was seen photos of him and a girl who looks identical to her, it became harder and harder to ignore the signs here.
As D4VD. Now, when this news came out, nobody thought in the slightest that David was actually behind a cold-blooded murder. I mean, there's no way that a pop artist who recently skyrocketed to fame would just ruin their life by someone, right?
And as I mentioned in my last video, I mean, once the dominoes started falling in this case, they were really tumbling quickly because people started finding more and more evidence that these two were linked a little bit more together than just some vague pictures, because there were Discord messages and Reddit posts that were reported to be from David and his community that started to make it very obvious that David's fans were at least aware of his interest in underage girls, as well as his connection to a girl by the name of Celeste. So there was even chats with David and a user named Celeste in his Discord server where they were clearly flirting and claiming they were expecting a baby. And yet other Discord users seemed to confidently tell people that David and Celeste were dating. And the worst part is there are a few past messages from people in the Discord server calling him out for his part in Celeste's disappearance and trying to solicit young girls in general. So I mean, clearly this is a horrifying pattern. There were even reportedly a few people in his community trying to get the info out long before Celeste was found. So take these Reddit posts, for example. There were clearly people calling him out. But again, before the discovery of Celeste, and I guess even immediately after, lots of people didn't want to believe their new favorite artist could be capable of doing something this horrific. And I guess they were just kind of throwing all the allegations under the rug like it was some witch hunt. Even though, like I mentioned, his discography didn't exactly paint him out to be a saint. If anything, it only really just implicated him. I mean, just look at these lyrics. This doesn't look good whatsoever. But even though he maintained his innocence at the time, or at least wasn't addressing the situation, David still canceled the rest of his tour once Celeste was found. And I said this in my last video that this move made sense even if he wasn't guilty of all this, because, you know, the spectacle that started to build around his story would have made it impossible for a normal show to go on, but certainly it didn't make him look good. But for months, I mean, rumors flew back and forth. The homeowners that David was renting from hired their own private investigators to look into things. Law and Crime was reporting extensively on this, which unfortunately usually was just more speculation and no real movement. So we didn't have too many answers for a long time. And it actually felt like for a while that nothing was happening. People threw out stupid theories like Celeste had probably overdosed and the crime was more moving her. But regardless, you had a kid that lost their life somehow and was left in a trunk for months. This is as bad as it gets. But finally, on April 16th, David was arrested, and on April 20th, he was formally charged with first-degree murder, as well as murder for financial gain and murder of a witness to an investigation. And it was also released that she was essentially stabbed, which is just horrifying. So that completely invalidates the whole ODing speculation. And the LA District Attorney's Office released a statement claiming this, which is nothing short of just horrifying. And it doesn't get better because they also dropped a bombshell to, I guess, seemingly confirm a lot of people's suspicions about David's actions. All of this is just so beyond disgusting. But they ended the statement by saying, "To Celeste's loved ones, we will get the justice you seek and deserve." And it seems like the statements just got worse and worse. They're saying that he was in fact involved with a minor, and that when he blew up, and I guess she threatened to expose him for his crimes, he decided he only had one choice, which I guess was doing this for financial gain. Because what they're alleging he was trying to do was save his music career. And it's all just so tragic. A child had to pay for all of this, and the dude still lost his career regardless. And the DA also mentioned that a part of the reason all this took so long for them to press charges was the condition of Celeste and I guess the cooperation or lack thereof cooperation of some of the witnesses. So just as suspected, they just want to have all of the information possible. And it's safe to say they now have a lot of information. They also found a bazillion gigabytes of the worst possible thing to have on your devices. So that's not good either. I mean, everything about this case is really alleging that David is the worst of the worst of human beings. So now David is being held without bail, and he's had his lawyers enter a not guilty plea for him on Monday. So I guess the dude is just going out kicking and screaming because I don't think anyone believes him at this point. I am surprised his lawyers do, or honestly, they're probably just doing their job. And obviously they're going for life in prison, but not only life in prison, they're also going for that step up as well. So again, not looking good for David here. So regardless, I will be following the updates on this case. I might actually show up to the case as well. We'll see. I'm glad Celeste and her family are finally getting some sort of justice because no kid nor family should ever have to go through something like this. But regardless, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.